breaking the United States is approaching a critical legal deadline in the Iran war. By law, President Trump is supposed to get Congress approval after 60 days. But here's the problem nobody in Washington agrees on when those 60 days actually end. Tuesday update. A major constitutional question is now unfolding alongside the conflict with Iran. Under the War Powers Resolution of 1973, U.S. President can only conduct military operations for 60 days without formal approval from Congress. After that, the law says those operations must either be authorized or stopped. Now here is where things get complicated. The United States formally notified Congress about military action against Iran in early March. Based on that timeline, many lawmakers say the 60-day deadline is now here or already passed. That would mean, legally, the president should either seek approval or begin winding down operations. But not everyone agrees. Some members of Congress and officials inside the administration argue that the timeline is not that simple. They say the ceasefire that began in April changes everything. According to this argument, when active fighting pauses, the 60-day clock either stops or resets. And that interpretation is now at the center of a major political and legal dispute, because the War Powers Law does not clearly say that a ceasefire pauses the clock. Many legal experts argue the opposite, that once military forces are engaged, the timeline continues regardless of pauses in combat. So what you have now is a situation where the law itself is clear, but the interpretation is not, and that ambiguity is creating space for political maneuvering in Washington. Now let's talk about what Congress is actually doing, or more accurately, not doing. Lawmakers are divided. Some argue the war should never have started without approval and are pushing for limits. Others say Congress needs to formally authorize the mission, but so far there has been no unified action. Multiple attempts to pass resolutions limiting the war have struggled, and lawmakers are not even fully aligned on whether they need to act immediately or wait. Some are also pointing to a possible 30-day extension in the law, but that extension is technically meant for safely withdrawing forces, not continuing a conflict. Now here is the bigger picture. This is not just about a deadline. This is about who has the authority to decide whether the United States goes to war. The Constitution gives that power to Congress, but over time presidents have taken a larger role using their authority as commander-in-chief. The War Powers Resolution was designed to limit that, to ensure Congress still has a voice. But what we are seeing right now is that system being tested in real time, because if lawmakers cannot agree on when the clock ends, they also cannot agree on when they need to act, and if they do not act, the president effectively continues without clear authorization. Now let's look at the administration's position. Officials argue that the current situation is not an active war, pointing to the ceasefire as evidence that hostilities have paused, but at the same time U.S. forces remain active in the region and military pressure continues. So the question becomes, if operations are still ongoing, can it really be said that the war has stopped? That is exactly what lawmakers are now debating, and there is still no clear answer. Now here is why this moment matters. This debate is happening while tensions remain high and the situation is still unstable. So Congress is not just debating legal theory, it is deciding whether to take ownership of this conflict or leave that responsibility with the president. And so far, the signal is mixed. Some want to vote, others are willing to wait, and some are avoiding the decision entirely. That uncertainty matters because power does not just come from laws, it comes from whether those laws are enforced. Now here is what to watch next. Watch whether Congress moves to authorize the war, watch whether lawmakers attempt again to limit military action, and most importantly, watch how the administration defines the situation, because if this is no longer officially considered a war, the 60-day requirement could be bypassed entirely. Here is the bottom line. The United States is not just facing a foreign policy challenge, it is facing a constitutional question. When does a war legally begin? When does it legally end? And who gets to decide? Right now, there is no clear answer. The clock may be at 60 days, but in Washington, nobody agrees what time it is.